wheelhouse is just like we're different. We aren't just doing a simple podcast and asking for donations. We're actually earning our way, and not just that, but doing it so that we're leading by example of being independent.
Yes. And there we go. I had the echo. So we're live.
I'm not on
Hey,
YouTube
Pamela.
yet.
We are on the
I'll
Loosh,
work
on the Loosh tube, so we'll have to mind our P's and Q's today.
or not.
Hey, everybody. It's good to be back. Happy Gregorian New Year. I'm going to hit record and we're going to do this. Here we go. Hey, great to see Don Lester in the chat.
What up, Don?
And boom, we're back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the captain of the AV ship, Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme. Enjoying the winter. Hope you guys are as well as we celebrate the Gregorian New Year today with this special in-house chat with Bear and I. So much gratitude for all you guys in the Alfa Vedic community. We love you so much. And we're excited for 2025, really coming at this year with a bountiful cup of gratitude. And yeah, just couldn't be happier with where everything's going. Of course, there is always the darkness, which we'll touch on, but the darkness can't exist without the light. And we're here to shine a bright light upon you all today. The roots of what has become the Alfa Vedic community were sowed in decades past. The introduction of mom and pop health food stores, organic farming, the rebirth of naturopathic medicine, and an almost universal disdain for war and government encroachments, and the hopes for a new era of peace and prosperity on the near horizon. Our own naivety.
Now you got me going. Naivete.
Naivete. I even have the accent correctly on the word here, but however, would render a good portion of
I took 10 years of French, so I had French nuns teaching me. None of it stuck, but I just thought I'd say that.
With a ruler to boot, right? You
oh man, still got the scars to prove it.
See, if I would have gotten that word wrong, I'd have a smarting hand right now. So anyways, this would render a good portion of that generation vulnerable to an insidious and pervasive agenda already unfolding under the deceptive guise of benevolent social equity and the fog of invisible terrorists. No pun there with the fog. We might touch on that today. Many unwittingly succumb to the guile of the predator class, but a vigilant few pierce the veil of deception intended to redirect and cull the herds into a more manageable number. We birthed and schooled our children at home and enjoyed homegrown food while substituting nature's own pharmacopeia for the synthesized poisons that would otherwise despoil natural design. Some of us jumped headfirst into the treacherous waters of, quote, legal land to rediscover the marvelous blueprint handed to us by the divinely inspired forefathers of this free republic. We understood the authentic meaning of rebuilding the temple as it pertained to our personal biological and spiritual selves. America, the anatomical heart of this realm, can only realize its destiny with the stewardship of a populace robust in mind, body, and spirit. A new generation of intrepid souls, undaunted by the machinations that would otherwise distract and impede, are gathering in preparation for a new era that cannot be thwarted by any earthly attempts to undermine the next evolutionary leap of mankind. The Alfa Vedic mission is our humble contribution toward this end. And we remain in constant gratitude to the Alfa Vedic community and our many friends leading in independent but similar efforts, such as the Kins domains of the Anastasia fame. Dr. Bear Lando and myself will commence the 2025 AlphaCast season today with an always popular in-house episode. We're going to give you a glimpse of what you guys can expect from us this new year, what our future podcasts will be showcasing as a diversity of guests with expertise in areas both pertinent and practical for those seeking DIY information, and deep dives into the arena of real science to inspire and prepare for the possibilities that lie ahead. Our private Alfa Vedic membership, which you can access if you haven't signed up yet at alphavedic.com/join-us. The link is in the show notes here. It's going to continue to enjoy the multiple topic chat groups ranging from homeschooling, self-care, home garden to table food production, equity and law, independence, good reads, and a general exchange of experience and wisdom from our well-informed members. Deborah and Bear will be offering a live monthly Back to the Land question and answer session to our executive membership, along with more regular content drops to the AV Off-Grid Elegance YouTube channel. Myself and Bear will continue live executive membership meetings for intimate chats, safe from the YouTube censorship and the like. Members will have access to new limited production formulas from the Alfa Vedic farm and Bear's lab, while the AV open access site will continue to introduce new offerings unique in the entire health lifestyle industry. Really excited just to jump into this in-house chat today. One of these products that we recently released is our 0 Point Gold line. Here's one right here. One of my favorites is just the full spectrum. Take it every morning. Also loving the cleanse, and the sleep is a great one. But very excited to finish launching all of those products, Bear, and we have lots more to announce this year.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. With that full spectrum, we get a comment every once in a while from people that were used to our old full spectrum in the plain 0 Point line, and they say, boy, this tastes kind of strong. Well, you know, with the old stuff, you took a tablespoon. With this, you take a quarter of a teaspoon. So it's highly concentrated. Just put in a little water or something. So we'll do more infomercials later. But wow, great to be here. You know, these are my favorite chats. I enjoy all the guests that we interview, but our real guests are you guys, you know, the AV community. You're what makes it happen. And without you guys, I'd be out in the woods somewhere, and Mike would be out snowboarding, and you know, we'd all be doing something else, which is fine too. But thank you from the bottom of our hearts for supporting us, because you know, long ago I tried to disappear into the sunset, and Spirit kept grabbing me by the nape of the neck and bringing me back out into the open. So I feel like there's still something left that I'm supposed to contribute. And this platform is a lead by example prototype of what I feel and what Mike feels, I think, what every community should be modeled after. You know, we talk about decentralization and everything, but I think all too often we really focus on the powers that shouldn't be, the corporatocracy, and say, boy, they've got monopolies, and, you know, remember old mom and pop downtown Main Street. And well, we have to just start doing it rather than complaining about the folks that have used fake government, fake news, and everything inauthentic in order to really try to extinguish the notion of self-determination. So if every community had just a few small farms like ourselves, we specialize in medicinal herbs. In our community, we have folks, you know, in town that have a few cows. You can go in there if you're local and you know the folks. You can get your raw milk. We don't ask for permission. We have another organic farm just adjacent to them, where they grow great organic food in ample amount to supply the whole community. So they have a little stand down there. You know, it's just what every community should be doing, as well as, I think, attracting practitioners that can take on the task of real medicine and take care of the folks in that community. And the people in that community, like, you know, a couple thousand years ago in Asia, they used to really make sure that that individual had nothing to do but to take care of them. So people came in, they swept the floors and learned, became apprentices, to pass on the knowledge to the next generation. We live in a different world. I get that. However, our media arm and our private membership will be going more and more in that direction. In 2025, you'll see, to provide some of the knowledge that I was privileged to have handed to me that isn't available in naturopathic college, chiropractic colleges, or even, postdoctoral seminars these days. And we want to start providing some of that and just really prepare for the next generations, because 2025 is the beginning of a new world. Now, in my Mike, I'll come up for air in a second. Well, let's go. What's the theme?
Please keep going, Bear. I'm just saying hi to everyone in the chat.
First off, the theme of 2025 is right on my hat here. If you can read it, it says, "Don't let the bastards get you down." And that's kind of where we come from. And
that's great.
I mean, really, no words could be truer, because that's the goal, is to take the wind out of our sails and discourage us and just, relegate folks to passive beta type folks, So that ain't going to happen. The truth is out in the open. In the write-up today, I purposely did just a little timeline of what life was like when Deb and I were first together, back in the early 70s. And we were really excited. We're starting to read books now. I did my pre-med and all that. And I was, went through the whole Stanford thing and became a paramedic, fireman, and with the full intention of continuing on in conventional medicine, eventually as an MD. And then some folks took me under their wing, some prominent people that within the hospital system, and kind of opened my eyes to things. But, even prior to that, all this exciting new change was happening. We'd already made it through the 60s. It looked like we really had the war machine back on its heels, naively. But, temporarily they threw us a couple bones and withdrew from Vietnam and other things that, were going on at that time. A lot of turmoil, not as much as today, but it was pretty tumultuous. And we had health food stores, in a little town in Fairfax in Northern California where I grew up. The Good Earth was great, little private enterprise, and you go in there, it smelled different. It's just exciting. We go in there, it became a community hub where we'd meet people of mind and exchange ideas, get our food. Those folks with the Good Earth, they have, well, never mind, I won't say more. It's a little different these days. They've gone more corporate, like the other big corporate store that has really tried to undermine the whole mom and pop. Well, they already have undermined the whole mom and pop health food industry.
And probably required masks. During the COVIDian erectus.
Yeah, in that little town of Fairfax, a rural community where I was from, not only did it have the first health food store, but the Good Earth folks, the original founders, founded the whole organic movement, which became, again, usurped by bureaucracies that now you have to ask permission to, have an organic thing. Yeah, so it all started there. We also invented mountain biking. We started taking the wheels off our old Schwinn Varsity 10 speeds and putting big handlebars and different seats and fat tires, and we're bombing up and down the hills. And so, it was just a fun time. The whole fitness industry, came into prominence. People were really, concerned about their health, their bodies being fit. Deb and I were from the athletic community. We were old jocks at heart. And so there was another organization, I won't mention names, but a very prominent guy started something called Focus on Fitness. And he invited Deb in to be one of her main trainers, and she had the first aerobics class ever, which also started in Marin County there. So it was kind of a hotbed of a fun little thing. We were reading books on naturopathy from Pavo Arola and Paul C. Bragg, all the old, icons, and we were experimenting with our diets. I went from a 280-pound football player to a 210-pound martial artist, vegetarian, and it's just, we're just exploring. We're not condoning any diet, better or worse. We're just into the adventure of exploration. It was a great time. And things were fun, good music, no limits. And
Yeah,
then
it's
all of a sudden the
amazing.
drugs
It's
came in.
amazing, Bear, how much of the nexus of that area was in the Bay Area for all of this really cutting edge exploration of health and wellness. I'm thinking of like even the chef Alice Waters, who she was like very instrumental in bringing the farm to table experience to the kitchen restaurant experience in Berkeley in the early 70s. You had so much coming out of that culture wise, and it's amazing to see how inverted it has become over the last 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Then they brought in the drugs, and that's what they always do to destroy a culture. Cocaine and money. So we went from the 60s to 70s back to the land. We're living out in, we're living on the beach at that point, a little surf community right before we vacated and left to Fiji and then eventually Hawaii. And cocaine, of course, everybody thought, oh, kind of a harmless little white powder. I didn't get into it. On the other hand, we saw a lot of our friends, and pretty soon we're really going down the tubes with it. So we go, oh, here's the ugly underbelly. And then all the hippies turned into yuppies and went for the other drug, money. And, the 80s came in, Ronnie Reagan, everything's fine. And, it's kind of fun in a different way, but, it really took the heart out of the authenticity of what was happening. And then, of course, the advent of the first cell phones and technologies and the computer age, which, I didn't have any computers till like the later 90s. It's just because we were too busy having a life, running our practice and so forth. So because of the changes that I saw and because of some influential people within the medical field that, again, opened my eyes, I jumped ship and went to a four-year naturopathic college and then chiropractic college after that. And then, fortunately, I was involved in a circle that the original applied kinesiologist, George Goodhart, who became a very good friend of mine, and all the folks involved there. And then with Alan Beardall, it kind of morphed into a more specific kind of neurological-based muscle testing we call clinical kinesiology, which has been bastardized and everybody's out testing simple muscle testing, which really leaves the neurological model. So everything's, kind of changed. And the old school stuff really took a lot of study and a lot of practice, and I'm glad I did it. But the main point I'm trying to bring up is because certain prominent medical doctors from Germany came out publicly who were investigating what we're doing. They said, this is the only possible way you can get a very authentic read or feedback from the autonomic nervous system, something that had never been done in medicine before. And so that first wave of German medical doctors came over and they're studying with us. And through that, I was introduced to German bioterrain medicine and jumped in with both feet. And that was some of the old school, some of the like one German lady, who wrote the book that I still have on my shelf here, Maria Blecker, and a host of others. I became their kind of one of their star pupils and got, microscopes and really got into the whole terrain system of medicine. And that's what I did for 40 some odd years in my private practice and looking at people's blood, but then also incorporating all the hands-on technique, because I think holistic medicine, for lack of a better term these days, is more what do I take, or maybe you have a specialty in chiro or acupuncture. But like the old masters a long time ago, they incorporated it all. They also learned how to read energy. We actually have technologically assisted radiesthesia devices. The most recent morphing of that is in biogeometry, which adds new dimensions. So to be a complete doctor and somebody that every community should have access to, should be somebody that is, I think growing their own stuff, making their own stuff, and also bringing a synthesis of all the best things that have come down literally through the centuries, And when I was in naturopathic college, we weren't quite licensed yet in the state of California. And but we had a wonderful campus, still good friends with a lot of, folks that I went to school with back then. And every Friday we'd have an assembly where we'd have guest speakers, some of the best in the world in their field of natural medicine. And I used to sit next to this old guy. I've told this story before, but for some of our news guests, he was a naturopath in the early 1900s. And at that time, which most people don't understand, naturopathy was the prominent medical system in America. There's no such thing as medical doctors. When medical doctors came in, they're shunned because everybody said, wow, those guys make me sick. And of course, it was all based on Rockefeller oil-based pharmaceuticals that didn't work and made people feel horrible. So through influence within our bought and paid for government, they did away with naturopathy licensure and started throwing people in jail. There was a 4-story building in Philadelphia, the largest collection of books on natural healing, collections from all over the world. It was the most extensive library of such in North America, and that was burnt down. And the guy that used to sit next to me in these assemblies every Friday, he was in his 90s, and he used to tell me all these stories. I've backed it up with my own research. And Mike, you've done your own research and verified that all this was true. And he just said, I just love sitting here and listening to you guys and seeing an actual college in the formation where you're starting to bring back this knowledge and really go through the legal system. We know that's a mistake now, but back then we, we'll be licensed and then everything's going to be great. And he said, I just marvel, and that, because I had my family destroyed, lost everything. I'm paraphrasing him. I spent ample time in and out of jail. He says, I didn't even care because I treated people in jail. That was my vocation. I did it wherever I was at. And here you guys are in an open assembly in a college, bringing it back. And, it used to bring tears to his eyes and myself as well. And it was greatly motivational for me at the time. Now, of course, naturopathy, along with chiropractic, has been standardized so that all students have to pass a national board, very similar, if not identical, to what medical doctors go through, as far as the first core 4 years. And I talk to naturopaths now, and there's really no roots. There's no history. They're glorified, kind of what I always talked about as green allopaths. I have a good friend who was just out here last summer from Hawaii, who I went to that naturopathic college with, and she is one of 2 people. Now, she's in Hawaii, and in Hawaii, it's a very extensive network of naturopaths. It's big in Hawaii. There's a lot of them. And there's an association, and they all, gather and communicate. And so out of all these naturopaths, her and one other naturopath were the only ones that did not condone and spoke out against the roll up your sleever. That's how far it's deviated.
Well,
and I could go on, but rather than just do old guy lamentings, we're finding solution. And the solution is to really try to inspire a new generation of people that will, and new generations of people that have gone through chiropractic college or naturopathic college, and they a lot of times they contact me and say, hey, where do I learn this stuff? And I say, I don't know. Everybody's dead, or have you, or retreated into the backwoods, and there's no schools left. And then, of course, the powers that shouldn't be also really give you a lot of grief if you start doing things. As a result, even in the 80s and 90s, when I was peaking out in my heydays of practice, I did it in private premises. I was never out in a, hanging my shingle in the commercial zone. We're extremely busy, just, word of mouth. I've talked about my clinic before. It was really a cool deal, multidisciplinary staff, and we did a lot of good things, but we knew better than to do things, especially because we're having success, that would draw the ire of the folks that don't want people to know that there are solutions and things that they had systematically eliminated from any kind of primary healthcare provider curriculum. So that brings us up to present. And through that experience, I had an interesting career. And again, a lot of this is just kind of a recap of things we've talked about in the past, but I just want to create a timeline of how we got to present time and what Alfa Vedic is about and what our plans are for 2025 and beyond. So we became targeted. I became targeted, actually had some nice visits with the FBI and hauled into custody, although they didn't retain me, but tried to scare the bejesus out of me. And being the obstinate type, I just kind of gave them the double finger, double barrel salute there. And so they didn't know what to do with me. But my crime back then was, of course, they knew that what we're doing, not just in medicine, but we're also getting involved in legal land, as I, mentioned in the write-up there. We became very active in the Hawaiian sovereignty movement, and I was able to study firsthand with some of the icons in that movement that gave birth to all the really educated people that we deal with today, that are the next evolution of what we learned just by sticking our necks out. And so that was more why the FBI was investigating and, harassing me. I was targeted financially. They took every dime we have. We started over, Deb and I, when we were 50 years old. We were well set for life. And so, but that's okay. Through those experiences, we created a lot of
gotta love
things
those
along the way.
Clintonistas, Bear.
Yeah, that's we actually got to rub shoulders with them a little bit and found out that I can't say too much, but they're behind some robbery that was confirmed to me by a comptroller of a PM that I knew from some dealings overseas, and they said, "Oh yeah, they're the ones that took a lot of money from some institutions that we're involved with." So here it goes. And in my practice, I had some interesting folks that were prominent. Well, I'll just keep it vague and say involved in NASA and fake launchings, especially the most prominent one. And by the way, Mike and I are interviewing somebody who has really blown the whole moon landing thing wide open. He was just on, you can talk more about this because you actually knew more about him than I did. I just listened to him on Candace Owens, and he's also been on Joe Rogan, as you told me. I didn't even know that. I just, on a lark, gave him a jingle. And I also told him that I had some experience that I would not divulge publicly, but it intrigued him, in the private, that I had some interactions with one of the folks that was allegedly there, the whole family for an extended time.
Allegedly, just to be clear,
Don't say
allegedly
anything.
on the moon, on the Apollo mission.
Yeah, but don't say anything more on that.
Yeah.
And so, and then also in the large corporate world, CEOs of large automobile manufacturers, NFL franchise owners. It's all a big club. You don't own a team like that unless you're part of it. So I had some of those guys. We used to just, and people in entertainment, I used to sit around with Maurice White from Earth, Wind, and Fire and talk about UFOs in my background in my backyard because he was really into that,
Well,
and
we
you can
and
tell
we
by some of
have
their covers. And
we have those similar parallel lines in our lives because me growing, going to UCSB and hanging out in Montecito and then working in Hollywood, I rubbed shoulders with billionaires and people that own
yeah,
owners of the Indiana Pacers and
yeah,
pictures of them with the Clinton with Hillary on their fridge and all that
yeah.
and yeah, we could it's interesting when you get the insights into these folks and one you realize too even they are low level low level.
They are, but they know stuff.
They do.
And when you and I first, became friends, it was fun because you had that background, and we could sit around and talk about stuff, and that's how
Yeah.
you and I got started in this business together. The 80s were an amazing time because I started seeing a lot of people with AIDS, and
And not hearing aids. We're talking.
yeah. Now we're gonna talk in some code and everything because how many are we still carrying one strike, or did we get rid of both strikes? Or
We are currently dangling with one strike, one just released, and I had to take an online education course through YouTube Academy to make sure that I'm indoctrinated
so you've
fully.
seen the light,
I've
you've
seen the
seen the
light
error in
now.
your ways.
I have. I actually, I got to put my mask on for at least 3 to 4 hours a day now. But besides that, and I got to go to the clinic and roll my sleeve up, and yeah, and
What a
moo
bunch
like a
of
cow.
douchebags.
Hey,
Unbelievable.
Stellium
So
7 in the
during that,
chat. Topher, I just want to give a shout out. Happy New Year, Topher Gardner in the chat. Stellium 7 in the chat. Love you guys.
that was an interesting era because there's a guy by the name of rhymes with Ouchie, and he was very prominent back then behind that whole thing. Now, I'm not one of these research guys that goes through papers and, I'm not from an Ivy League. I had a Stanford credential and I went through a lot of school. So, I feel good. I earned my stripes, but I'm not an Ivy League researcher kind of guy. Now, we have some amazing friends that are from that genre and they do all the heavy lifting in that area. Great. That's not who I am. I come from a family of immigrants, legal immigrants, that, are dairy farmers and, I grew up with broken English and just, really kind of do it yourselfer sort of people. I never would have, been allowed on a college campus with my high school record, which I, you know, got thrown out several times and they grinned and bared me just because I was a good athlete. And so I got scholarships and, did okay once I was in college, but, I wasn't, that type of achiever. Became one after that when I realized, oh, I can't think. All you have to do is show up, listen, and read a book now, and then you can ace your classes. And then, they used to hate me at Stanford because the stuff we're learning in our medical studies, I said an effing chimpanzee could be taught this shit, because just mechanical stuff, and they hated that. But anyway, so what I bring to the table is I was a clinician, and it's like being a farmer. Things work or they don't. And by working with a lot of these clients that came in with advanced AIDS, I was able to see what was really making them sick and what would really get them well. And we had fantastic success. And
Were
in
these
that
were these
process,
clients typically homosexuals?
a lot of them were.
Mhm.
And of course, they came in because not that gays are more prone. Well, the lifestyle at the time was I was in the heyday of the first San Francisco influx of, and they're just doing pretty outlandish things in New York and San Francisco. I mean, anybody would get sick with that lifestyle. But the real kicker is they were given a roll up your sleever for hepatitis. And
Yep.
of course, that had certain things in it that produced the symptoms that we now think of as, the Ouchie syndrome.
To me, I come to the conclusion, Bear, that it was the number one vector for the
Yeah,
symptomology.
well, if you go back historically, before they introduced it to the folks that were frequent visitors to the gay bathhouses in New York, they introduced it through a smallpox roll up your sleever in Africa. And it worked great. Everybody got sick and died. You know, great success. And then they brought it here, and
Blamed it on a
first New
monkey.
York, then to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so just again, I'm not this brilliant researcher. I hate that shit. I get bored with just reading about double-blind studies and all this because I don't believe them in the first place, which gets us a little bit further down the road when I started working in the alchemical studies and then, you know, duplicating what I was reading about in lab and some other things I was involved with and realizing, wow, there's a whole other qualitative side of science. And the concept of a double-blind study is really nonsensical. It's literally impossible to do such. And then, of course, you have your, you know, your moronic colleagues that are all bootlickers for the system read your paper and they say, I agree. Now you get to say, oh, it's peer reviewed. It's like, what a bunch of frickin', you know. So meanwhile, back to clinical stuff, you do things, and regardless of what the last phony antibody test showed positive for HIV, which has nothing to do with anything, which, you know, titers can be raised by anything, whether they're up or down, people get better, and they get better when you do this. They don't get better when you do that. When you eliminate something else they're taking that they get from somewhere else, wow, now the results really get good, and it's easier to rebuild the terrain. So that's my wheelhouse, and it's you connect dots, and you don't have to be a genius to do it. You just have to understand and be able to hands-on deliver some of the things that I was taught that are no longer taught. So that brings us to a whole period where I witnessed over 100 people who started coming out and talking about similar successes, not just with that, but also with the C word. And they all met untimely demises, like going out for the morning run and all of a sudden they trip and drown in a mud puddle, you know, on the side of the road.
And interesting enough, Bear, were most of these licensed? I bring this up for a specific reason.
They came from both the conventional licensure and also the alternative licensure crowd. Now, one individual.
Yeah.
No, what were we going to say?
I was just, so something just comes down to this idea of contracting, and like this can go across a pretty broad spectrum of whistleblowers being offed when they have contracted specifically to engage in this specific contract and have thus agreed to zip it up, mum's the word. And unless they rescission that contract, they break the contract. And I think in the boys downstairs, in their code of ethics, it is okay for them to then do what they need to do to off them because they've broken the contract.
Yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. Now, the most recent and most intimate associate I experienced this with, it's been about 20 some odd years now, I guess, kind of recent. I moved back to the mainland, and I had a little different than the big clinical operation I had, you know, over the years. And I just had a very private, one-on-one kind of practice. I don't want to say too much about that either for certain reasons, but you know, I was very, very busy. I had a 2-year wait list, and you know, so kind of instantly. And
you weren't licensed, right? Well, I don't know if you want to go into that, but you were doing this in the private.
Well, that's why I'm being vague, and I kept in a private.
Yeah.
So you know, it's water under the bridge. So you know, try to do something. Anyway, in this area, there was a very well-known MD who also brought skills from the old country, Asian culture. So he had a combination. He's kind of a cool guy. And little by little, number of his clients started seeing me. And even though we didn't work in the same room, we were very well aware of each other. And then people that I was seeing, I'm very careful to not step on other practitioners' toes. I said, hey, that guy's awesome. Here's what I can add, and never interfering with a sort of protocol that was already established by somebody else. And they got to compare notes on the other end, with the other doctor. And so we had kind of this reciprocal thing, even though we had no formal agreement. And the results kind of magnified between what the two of us were doing. And he became kind of vocal about having success with certain things in certain ways. And I kind of put word out to him that you might not want to do that. And sure enough, and I'm again being vague, you can even find this if you're really industrious and Google certain newspapers and find an individual as such that had himself and family murdered in the middle of the night. We know what really happened. And of course, they always make it look like something else, just a random somebody that just decided to kill him for the hell of it, right?
I remember that well. I remember that well.
So and then along with things that some of these other individuals in my early career would share with me, as we were barbecuing in my backyard or sitting on the beach together, and I got quite an earful in a lot of ways. And then especially when I went into the legal studies and then working side by side with some icons in that field. So here we are at the present time, since I haven't been formally practicing, but still learning, everything from biogeometry to new developments and all sorts of things, because that's just what I enjoy doing. Perfecting things that I learned long ago in the lab and trying to bring laboratory techniques that are very arduous and time consuming. If you're doing the old alchemical methodologies, which I'm capable of and have all the equipment to do it, but now incorporating new things in order to even improve, the quality of things, and also to make more available, even though they're complex and never going to be a mass market sort of item. That's what we enjoy doing, and then learning how to apply all these things to farming as well. To improve the qualitative aspects of things that is really what makes our world tick. And along the way, just like yourself, Michael, we found that while there's a systematic poisoning that's going on, it's no longer relegated to isolating individuals through medical procedures and indoctrinations on why people should do those things, which are part of a worldwide eugenics program from day one. Sorry, there's nothing else to call it. And this is not conspiracy land. Anybody who doesn't believe that really hasn't had their eyes open for very long. Now we've got aerosoling in the skies and frequencies that are used not only to modify behavior and to make us sick. A lot of us have a constant ringing in our ears, which was never there before 2 years ago. And we're out in the boonies. We have it here. And Deb and I, in our last trip down south for Christmas, we're like, well, it's going to be interesting to see if we hear this everywhere. And sure enough, same down there is here. And we're like, we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's got to be something coming from the sky. It's not tinnitus. I know what tinnitus is and everything. So they're frequencies. Some of us are very acutely sensitive to them to the point where we can hear them. Ourselves included.
I've noticed it in the last myself in the last 6 months. I'm hearing,
yeah.
To me, it almost sounds like I'm hearing the silence get louder. It's not like a ringing. It's just like I'm hearing the atmosphere around me.
Brilliant way to describe it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I like that. The other thing we started noticing a few years ago is we always noticed the chemtrailing. Now, when we get out into the coast, into Crescent City, we notice even more, all the chemtrailing, it's ridiculous. Over in Medford, Oregon, places like that, wherever you have the flatlands where stuff can settle in. We get it over here, but, between the trees and everything, but it still drops down on everything and affects us. And what we started noticing is like clockwork, without fail, 100% all the time. Whenever there's a rain front coming in, they chemtrail the bejesus out of you, and then it comes down with the rain, and we all get sick. Headaches, issues with digestion, dizziness, just feeling irritable and angry, and all sorts of things. And then comparing notes, Mike, you and I are in a lot of networks internationally, and we're getting the same reports with people all over the place. And now the latest, of course, just this last week, is the mysterious fog that's making everybody sick. So obviously they're using water as a delivery vehicle for this poison. And, right, the first time I got hit the hardest is right before the Iconics people were here at the farm doing the documentary called The Magic Land on our little operation here at Alfa Vedic on the farm. And we're all stoked, the film crew's here, and my son's there as a director, and they're waiting for me. And I'm like talking to Deb, I'm like, man, I can't even get out of bed. I just felt horrible. Barely made it out by mid-morning in the first interviews, and you can see in the documentary, looking a little peaked, we'll just say that. But as, we're doing, they're interviewing me for segments of the film, I'm literally leaning against the fence, on my farm, where I'm growing stuff and everything, just holding myself up so I can fake it. So ever since then, it's just these periodic poisonings. Some are worse than others, and everybody gets sick, not just here, but, elsewhere. And now, and this leads us into 2025, because everything's out in the open. It's gone viral. People everywhere are like, wow, this is purposeful. And we know what's up. So 2025 is where the Klingon battleship exposes itself, because it's getting ready for the kill shot. Now, I don't want people to think that we're spreading fear, because that's not who we are. But we also believe that we have to be adult enough to understand the truth in order to find solution. And the real solution, of course, is within each one of us. And, as well as technologies in the outer that we can employ. And so 2025 is going hot. We've got a change in administrations. Not that I'm looking for a politician to fix everything, but there is a different dialogue hitting the mainstream now because of the change. You better believe there is going to be every trick in the book pulled, which is already happening, in order to circumvent any kind of change in the narrative. And so the predator class is fully exposing themselves because they have to. They can't operate in stealth. So this year is the end of the Cold War officially. It's the end of gaslighting, which people like myself have been frustrated by for decades. And it's going live. So my message to our folks is take care of yourself. It's in the atmosphere, in frequencies, in aerosols, and you really have to understand, number one, the technologies in order to flush your liver out, to keep these poisons moving through your body, to minimize exposure whenever you can. Turn the computer off at night and read a book in bed instead. Just minimize all your exposure. And more than anything, learn about who you really are on another level. Now, this gets into areas that for some people start to sound a little new agey, but we're talking about the most grounded knowledge since the beginning of time within this realm. And it's not about peace, love, dove, think double plus happy thoughts, and you'll be okay. No, you have to do the work. You have to do the work. What I used to tell my people that were my patients, I understood that my job was to extend their window of opportunity so they could stay in their body long enough to get the light bulbs come on. But the real light bulbs is that wherever your attention is at, that is what necessarily, due to our ability to have free will as co-creators, those frequencies through our beliefs and our emotions necessarily have to become embodied in our experience in biology. And what I told them is at the end of every day, act like you've got a little business and you have to do the accounting for your books. On one side of the ledger, you have truth. On the other side, you have all the bullshit that's been indoctrinated into us. And especially with patients, when they're hurting, when they're afraid because they've been given a death sentence, it makes it very challenging to keep your thoughts and emotions on the right side of the ledger. But at the end of the day, when you get to the point and say 51% of my attention was on truth versus crap, where you're home free and nothing can touch you. That is what is incumbent upon each one of us at this point in time to do in order to see in a new era that's going to be come to realization with or without us, because there's a bigger picture, bigger than any of us individually, depending on what we choose to bring into our own personal experience. And that's my beginning rant for the day.
I love it. Well, it's wisdom is really knowledge put into action. And that is I think we're moving into that age, right? And I do believe that I love the visual reference of the Klingon ship now coming in, because we're of course, one of the narratives coming into this year is that we're going to see motherships appearing in the sky, and whether that's Project Bluebeam or whatnot. But that is a good analogy, because I do
You don't believe in
believe
Klingons?
yeah, the Klingons will be showing themselves metaphorically because of, and it's interesting. I was, during your rant, I was thinking about so many different things, and no matter what, I was thinking about the gentleman you said you used to sit next to in those lectures and those talks, and he was the old timer, and how he was, even back then, you were able to hold those lectures and those courses and those classes without the FBI raiding you. And now we're having discussions like this all over the internet that, as you said, in the 70s and 80s, you would never imagine that people would be doing like summits on terrain, right? And these things. So there is this unfolding of consciousness that is happening no matter what. And so they must show themselves to stop it. I actually think that's what the fog is about. We had James Tunney on last year talking about the nano dust, the smart dust. And there's a lot of people proposing that that's what that was. And so they're trying to inject this stuff into our consciousness to use synthetic technologies to, continue their mind control. And then on the flip side, what are we seeing? We're seeing the potentiality of actually getting fluoride out of the water in the United States this year.
Amazing.
Amazing. And so there's always a counteractive force. How I opened up today, right? The light and the darkness, and the light will always outshine the darkness. So yes, it's, with every dark rabbit hole we go down, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And I am a very, very, I don't like to say hopeful, but I'm very knowledgeable. I have the knowledge and the wisdom to put into action this year, that not only are we going to be okay, but we're going to be thriving because of this community that we've been able to develop through Alfa Vedic, Music in Sky, and then, like you said, all these other parallel communities that are developing. And on that note, Bear, I was thinking about culture and how important culture is, but with decentralization, I do believe we are entering an epoch that we haven't seen in a very, very long time, where culture is no longer controlled by the mainstream conventional systems. like you were saying, the hippies in the 60s and then the yuppies. I don't believe, and I think this is a reaction to the corporatism, the monoculture that has been pushed upon us by these large technological systems, the technocratic systems, the corporatism. In reaction to that, we are seeing a groundswell of decentralized, smaller communities that are creating our own culture. And that is powerful stuff, because no longer do we need to look towards the TV to what they're saying how we should be acting, what the Hollywood is saying how we should think, how the record companies are saying what we should listen to, what the advertisements are saying what we should eat or what we should wear. This is really revolutionary. And so it's a decentralization not only of how we do things with money, with technology, but how we think, and how we can go back to really not only respecting the individual, but seeing that it's individual consciousness of each individual spark and each human here, each man and woman. That is the solution. That is the answer. It's not looking to people as groups, as you are a hippie, you are a yuppie, you're a normie, you're alt. No, it's we're all individual sparks of consciousness from the creator, that each individually have the power to affect massive change on a massive scale from one point of being. And I think that is the revolution that we're all starting to really welcome and come into fruition here in 2025.
Yeah, very well said. And going back to the 60s, when I was in college, 60s and early 70s, the hippie movement was totally contrived. Of course, we didn't realize it back then. It was also very divisive, where people were in camps because of, to be cool, you had to smell bad and, and look a certain way and not shave your armpits. And I remember one time really hit, this is stupid. It really hit home with me. I was in a college party, and everybody's dancing, so I go out there.
To be fair, you weren't really. I mean, you have a mindset of a nonconformist and someone who's anti-establishmentarian, but you weren't a quote unquote hippie in the sense where you were group thinking hippie sort, were you?
Well, no, I mean, I had long hair sticking out the back of my football helmet and a Fu Manchu, but I still looked like a Neanderthal. And then this one incident kind of hit home to me. I'm in this party, and there's a lot of those types there. It was after a concert, and I go to dance with some chick, and she just goes, "Ooh," because of my stature, and football players were relegated with warmongering freaks and everything, and so it's just always this cultivated mindset that, like you said, even better, that they try to inculcate into cultures. And then, of course, it goes into the rap industry. Now, some early rap I used to really like. There's some conscious rap where people were doing some good stuff. But then it turned into this really toxic stuff. And what's happening now? We got Diddy and all these people being exposed. So, we find out that everything is infiltrated. But as you also say, this is a time where it stops. We actually start, using our own consciousness and understanding that that's our job. The other thing is that, well, go ahead. Any comments? I was going to go into another.
No, I just think, there is a fine line to walk with decentralization and culture. And you and I appreciate culture. We appreciate the arts. We're movie buffs. We like classic rock. I mean, there's an ability to appreciate and enjoy the nuanced variability and elements to all art, even if we know that some of it is contrived. Maybe it's Tavistock derived. Doesn't mean I'm going to totally hate on the Beatles. A Day in the Life, or there are classics from the Beatles that I absolutely love, even if Paul is dead. And so I think it's a part of the adulting process to be able to not fall, because this is one thing that I wanted to bring up today, and I think it's a very important thing for this community, is that I see a lot of people falling back into the trap of everything's a conspiracy, everything's evil, everything's dark. super black pilled. We saw it recently with the Great Experiment, which we could touch on briefly because we had Jaron and Witsit both on our Alpha Cast. I will say right now, I do not see them as shills. People who are calling them out as shills for going, I don't, Bear, you and I haven't talked about this, but there was the Great Experiment where they went down to Antarctica. I was following their live streams. I know those gentlemen. Now I haven't hung out with them in person, but I will say that those who are just claiming now that they're shills and that it was all made up, you have a duty, and this is a problem with the internet, is we're distanced from ourselves, and it's very easy just to put people on blast without any consequences. It was funny. I was actually called a controlled operative this week for the first time, which was pretty funny on Substack.
It's always been my understanding.
But the point here is the part of the adulting process here is to be able to not only discern what is truth and what's not, but then to understand that we live in a highly nuanced realm where we are dealing with human beings. We're dealing with living men and women that have faults. We're not perfect. And yeah, I think Jaron and Witsit kind of got played on that. They played into their ego, and they went down there, and they had belief systems that were compromised and that were not that were proven to be wrong. But for people just to jump into the black pill that they faked and they were green screening or in a studio and that they're part of the evil Jew plan or whatever, like we need to be bigger than that in 2025, and we need to be smarter, and we also need to be, and part of the adulting process is to be sure, even on the internet, before you go out and blasting people and making claims, that you have done the work to know that, because that'll come back on you morally, on your soul, by calling that out. So, and that's something that is part of the real science, right? That is what we take very seriously when we talk about health and wellness here. We don't just throw out random stuff like go take ivermectin and do this for your health. And I think we need to apply that on all elements of our life moving forward, because otherwise we are just feeding directly into the game plan of divide and conquer, which they really want to see happening. And even this comes down to the next, in politics and stuff, right? And putting people on blast and stuff.
Well,
yeah.
You said the key word, which is discern. It's about discernment. I will be the first one to say is I don't know anything. I have my own experience. Even the things I talk about in medicine, it's like, this is what I did. This is what happened. I have opinions based on that. Go create your own reality, make up your own mind. And that's what I even told people that came in me with work. It's just like, I don't think you need me. Okay, I'll do some stuff. You make up your own mind, make your decisions. And that's the way I always rolled. Now, there are people out there in the podcast world that make their clicks off of being a contrarian, whether it's right, left, or otherwise, and just always trying to sensationalize something, and I kind of listen to everything. I'm just interested. I don't care. I don't think I'm going to know the truth until I'm on the other side. But the whole point of this experience is to understand that this is a very mutable, what I believe, a simulation, whether you think it's a simulation of some deviant species controlling mankind, or just going into the concepts of people like Walter Russell that kind of show the electrical forces put in creation by our thoughts and our feelings that coincides with the old alchemist thought, or, kind of thought that they proved as well. And, whatever we put in motion at that level of consciousness, electricity precipitates. So what can you call that besides a simulation? And I don't care. Nobody's doing anything to me unless I let them do it. And if they're doing it and I don't know about it, well, that's part of the ride too. Like the gentleman that we had on, who's a gym owner, during the jibber jabber years, and we had a little discussion, and he's an old gym rat as I was, and we both said, yeah, you go to the gym because it makes you stronger. You go there because it's hard, it's because it's resistance. So we create these situations here. Okay, they're spraying us like bugs, don't go down the tubes with it or get all dark about it or anything. It's just like, well, if it doesn't kill you, it's going to make you stronger. And I'll go back to my original statement: don't let the bastards get you down, because that's the only way we lose. Otherwise, we can't lose. Now, I'm aware of a few individuals that are calling out other individuals. It's like, great. I mean, if that floats your boat, and if that's getting you clicks, or if you think that you've got a higher ground morally, intellectually, or any other ways, I don't believe that. But I honor your, whatever you're up to. I don't care. Now, when it comes to our podcast, we have all sorts of folks on. Now, we've been called out about having certain people, and people take exception for all sorts of reasons why we shouldn't have that person, or that means that we absolutely believe what our guest believes. Our job is to have a smorgasbord of diversity, true diversity, and just listen. And I have a blast. That's what keeps me doing this. I just sit back and I go, oh, that's interesting. And I learn shit all the time. Yeah. And sometimes I buy it, sometimes I don't. And at the end of the day, I change my mind all the time. Like Abby Hoffman once said, the most revolutionary thing you can do is to change your mind. Once you think you know something, you don't know anything. That's just, once you name it, you don't know it. So that's, I think, the conundrum that a lot of us out there in the podcast world, find ourselves in. And then, of course, when you open yourself up to the public, there's always going to be people taking shots at you, because everybody's got opinions, and that's okay too. I remember the first podcast we ever did, my son told me, he said, "Dad, whatever you do, don't ever read the comments." Yeah. Said, don't read them, and if you do, don't ever respond. And boy, what words of wisdom those ever were.
Oh man.
So here we are, and why don't we go maybe into I kind of teased out in that little write-up that we're involved in research and development. Maybe you should talk about what that means.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And that's a great segue too into how we apply what we do discuss here as the background of the show in our actual lives, right? And what we do and what we sell and how we fund ourselves. And this is a putting to practice in our lives through action. Once again, wisdom, right? Putting this knowledge into action and being a model for others to follow, because kind of going back to this culture thing is when we, and really going back to the good earth originally, what you're talking about in the 70s is, why was that a hub? That was a hub because you had individuals that were putting into action what they truly believed to be right, and going against the grain at that time. And it attracted others who wanted that. And I think and this is kind of funny because right now I guess there's some debate within the MAGA world about Elon Musk saying that you can't hire a good American anymore in technology, and so they need to bring all the Indians
Vivek made some kind of outlandishly arrogant comments, but whatever. I could.
It is, but guess what? On the flip side, awesome, because I don't think anybody that in our community should be working for those retarded technological massive corporations. That's a horrendous job. You're going in and punching in, getting your gold star. Owen Benjamin made some great comments on this. Go start a farm, start your own business, get into the real sciences, be an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is the path forward. And that's something that we try to always stress. And that's what we are. I've been an entrepreneur for going over 20 years, and be your own man. And, I think that's another great testament to how the Great Awakening is really taking over this country, as people are leaving corporate America. They don't see any point of having benefits, because the benefits are just funneling you into that evil allopathic system. What's the point of having benefits and all that? So it's about being self regenerative, focused on creating the new, within our own bounds, within our own systems. So I just thought that was funny that all of these, these arguments and stuff in the mainstream are just once again illustrating how ridiculous it all is anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And if research and go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, it's a segue, research and development. What are we doing?
Yeah. So if we take the bait and believe that we need the blessing or permission of normies in order to say whether we're legit or not by doing the kinds of studies they do, well, that's not even a reality as far as our consciousness. If you just appreciate the physics, the mechanics of waveform, creation, which creates every form and function in our experience and in our own biology, it is, since it comes from us, how can that not be influenced? So now you're designing a study, it has to be influenced. I don't care if you're sitting in another room or have control groups or anything else. It's a bunch of nonsense. I think there's kind of a limited place for that, but in the real functional world, that's not the way things are done. So in my own experience, if I waited for that kind of feedback before I would treat somebody clinically, I never would have treated anybody. And we had a lot of success. We helped a lot of people. We saw thousands of people over many years. That never would have happened if we would have gone down that road. If we waited until, the powers that be said, oh yeah, this kind of clean food is better than adulterated fake food, you can't wait, because their whole purpose is to make us wait to the point where it never happens, and also have agencies that go after you for daring to do just what you know is true. So research and development here is exactly what I did in my clinical experience. It's also what we do here on the farm. There's certain things that work. I'm changing stuff around all the time. Oh, that wasn't good to plant that stuff over there. I learned that, those things don't like that kind of environment. A couple years later, they're thriving because we learn through trial and error. Also, we have other technologies available, such as radiesthesia, which can be very technically based, which I believe is probably where we should stay, because we can kind of refine our questioning and our experience. If we have, devices that can be calibrated in a way where now you're tuning into the qualitative aspects of things in a very precise way, rather than just getting general feedback like some people do with bastardized muscle testing, or some people do with just pendulums, which, is feedback. There's, I don't have any problem with that. But in our wheelhouse, we really want to do things with some precision so we can make maybe more intelligent choices for what our next experiences are going to be, and then see what the results are. Now, I'm very fortunate through the Bigglesons, who are going to be on with us pretty soon again, because they've got a whole new curriculum going for the next year, and we're going to help them get that out. But I've also met some brilliant people in their circles. One of those individuals who has a long history with Wilhelm Reich circles, and also has some original instrumentation that was used in those circles in order to measure orgone directly. He gifted me with one of these instruments that he got through, those contacts. There's not many of those around anymore. And so behind the scenes, we're like, okay, in biological medicine, I'm looking under the microscope, and we see these little flashing, stars, looks like a universe. So when you look at a drop of blood, these little sparkling lights. And, in my original German training, we call it protids,
Yep.
kind of like the seeds of life.
Like
they were
called
called
microzyma.
Yeah. And what, my studies with Gaston Nason, he called them somatids. Bions, when you go into more the energy world of Reich. And then you also have the old school that was talking about mana, chi, you know, and prana, which is just light,
Yeah.
you know, not particles, but pure light. So going forward, what I'm doing with the help of some folks that have experience in other areas more so than myself, it's we're going to try to draw a nexus between all of those elements, because I think we're all talking about the same thing. In fact, I'm kind of convinced of it. And with some of the things that I'm able to do here between bodies, lab, and farm, and also start to take different measurements with Reich instrumentation, with biogeometry, with Lecker antennas, and so forth, we can start, you know, seeing firsthand the qualitative variations that happen when you do certain things, or between different samples of things. If we're talking about orgone, and over here we're talking about biological units called bions or protids, you know, we're going to take some qualitative measurements and say, okay, what the heck, you know, are we really talking about? And it's not to get over intellectual about, it's in order to just understand more how this world that we've all created together works, so that we can actually apply it to everything we do. That's real science. And real
I love it.
science, of course, was bastardized by bringing us totally into our brains and contriving stupid studies that have no basis in reality. Sorry, that's my bias, but I'm sticking to it. You know, just seeing how things really work in the real world. And that's what we're going to be doing more of. And we're putting together kind of a cool little team. You know, it started with just us, you know, my son, you, and Deb and myself. And now we've got other folks that are working with us. We've got people on the manufacturing end. We've got little modest footprint facilities, which is what we maintain purposely in order to stay true to our live light on the land, see how, you know, much you can do with just a little, and actually surpass what the quality of what's, you know, being produced out in the mass production market. And so, you know, that's our whole philosophy, because that can be duplicated, and that is going to prevent a monopoly. It's going to be true decentralization. So a lot of exciting things, and it's what keeps me in the game. It's what's fun.
I would say that this is very exciting around the further exploration into the bions, because once again, bringing the knowledge out into practice is bringing the wisdom out to the world, allowing us to really understand really who we are more and what we are and how this realm functions is going to allow us to move forward in a progressive state of new science, of new, you know, to countermeasure these things. And I think these symptomologies that we're seeing, the fog and this chemtrails, yeah, these are projections of this, the counterbalance of what we're doing here. And just like when someone has symptoms when they're ill, these are signposts for what we need to do to counteract them. And I've come up with theories around the bions, and not theories, that's not the right word, just a deeper understanding through reading what I've read. And there is a hermetical concept here of as above, so below. And I do believe that those are independent, conscious entities that are progressing through us. And each one of us is a university of sorts, where they are progressing towards becoming us eventually. And actually, Percival talks specifically about this in Thinking in Destiny. And each one of those is relation, maybe even, and I talked about this with Adam Bigelson, is maybe each of those is represented as a star in the sky clock above us. And you had mentioned on our private platform how these sparks of consciousness are indestructible. And this gets a little out there, guys, but when we unfold out of this current shell of anatomy of this body, as we pass through this initiation in the classroom and we come back, they come back into us. So they never leave us, and they are continually learning. And there's even an idea that, you know, these are elementals, right? And that they are light, pure light. And this kind of relates to the animal kingdom. And we've been talking about this with Eileen McCusick of late, because she had a recent Insta viral moment like you had. Was that 2 years ago with your electroculture video where I don't know how we've talked about this before. You have like 12, 13, 15 million views now on that. She did a funny video of just her tuning green beans for Christmas, and how they were more distraught and distorted than when she was tuning a piece of meat. And that hit mega viral because all the vegans got triggered by that and stuff. And she was saying how these were like tortured souls being fried up in the pan. But I only bring that up because I was relating to the animal kingdom and the vegetable kingdom, and how consciousness, and how we're starting to really come to a better understanding of just how consciousness works. And these little sparks of light, these bions, which are going through the progression of consciousness themselves. When we die, quote unquote, die, it's my belief now that they're released into the animal kingdom as archetypes that are basically representing the different emotions and feelings and desires we have that get represented in these archetypes of the animal kingdom. And then when we come back in, they're like a holdover for them in the realm. And then when we come back into our new body, they then are able to re-enter us. And this is what Percival talks about in Thinking in Destiny, which is pretty trippy and out there. But anyways, I only bring this up because it's these types of conversations that I think are important. And these are the types of conversations I do think the alchemists and the great natural philosophers and stuff were open to having, and they weren't shut off by reductionist materialist scientism, because they, as you said earlier, they were open to exploring these different ideas. And I think this is exciting to try to measure this qualitatively. I'd love to know more of how you guys plan to do that, but to understand how this all works.
Yeah, we'll all have a front row seat. Let's think about it this way. A lot of us, it's not a far-fetched concept these days for something we loosely call karma. And a lot of people are coming around to the idea that even Jesus taught to the Essenes about reincarnation is the way the world works. If you look at nature, just observe, everything recycles. So
and cause and effect, you can't deny cause and effect. That's
yeah. And spiritually, it's not just one strike and you're out, which is what the religions have tried to teach in order to invoke fear and control through that. Okay, so let's just say we have an experience and an embodiment. We're a work in progress, and we're manipulating energy, through our consciousness. And through that, we create distortions, not because we're bad, we're just, it's learning. And then those distortions are energy that, again, as you said, does not dissipate. That's kind of a mainstream science, acknowledgement these days. And then we recycle back. And, there's Walter Russell, people like that actually describe the mechanics of that and how it necessarily happens. And with that, we have other life forms. God's universe is replete with many different variations of life. Some of those we call elementals. Those are things that we acknowledge very openly here on the farm, and we consciously talk to them and work with them. And things happen when you just have these dialogues, and it just becomes normal. So the same thing, the little elementals that I used to look at under the microscope all the time, they take on those same distortions that we entertain because we are the God of their world. So wouldn't it kind of be intuitive that when we recycle ourselves, that we bring the whole gang with us? And in the process, the more conscious we become, we not only free ourselves from the wheel eventually, but also free them. And when they are free, then they have, now this is right out of Saint Germain teachings, not the new bastardized stuff, but the original stuff that emanated from Rosicrucian teachings through theosophy, through anthroposophy, and the whole lineage that eventually became the green books to just get the truth out in the open, available for everybody. They say very matter-of-factly that as these elementals are freed, then they will have their own opportunity for immortality. And you will provide that for them, and they will in turn populate your own system of worlds when you're taken out of quarantine and allowed to create your own system of worlds in a much grander scale, just like the 7 Elohim that have designed this system of worlds, which, by the way, we have a duplication of the sevenfold flame in our brain structure from them, because embodiment wouldn't be possible unless they did that for us. This does not negate the understanding of a one consciousness that individualizes in all its many forms. But of course, religions have really tried to undermine that truth. And when we individualize, when the creator has that idea of an individualization, as you or I or anybody that's ever been born into embodiment, it is an electronic force. And certain teachings with Saint Germain and folks like that, they call it the I am presence. What the Vatican left out of the experiences of Jesus are those lost years when he traveled and studied with other masters, because he was of a development that allowed him to be invited into those teachings. And he states very matter-of-factly, the documentation of that when he was given the understanding of I am, his mission on this earth and that embodiment was crystal clear. And I am was not an individualization of his ego embodiment. It was the fact that each one of us are an electronic I am that then projects our physical form. And when we align with that and heal the perception of separation, and we become reunified with that, then there's no such thing as fear, lack, time intervals necessary to precipitate our needs. And of course, the Vatican said, well, no, only one individual is able to do that. And now this might step on some toes, sorry about that. And when he said I am, it meant me, not the I am of everybody. And when we utter I am into the ethers, we are acknowledging our Godhead at our particular coordinate in consciousness that then is part of the sea of consciousness, of which there is only one and no separation, even though we get to experience the marvelous adventures of individualization that aren't always going to be the school of hard knocks. You know, we kind of made this part up. So I am is the most science-based important thing that we really have to wrap our minds around. It really, really is. And I'll say this one last thing, and take it or leave it. Anybody, if you start to really ponder these things and do certain practices regularly long enough until it becomes part of your consciousness, and there's no doubt, you will actually see that. You will see, you'll get little glimpses, and then it'll become more prominent. And then there's no question. It's an individual thing. You can't prove it to somebody else, but it's there all the time. And you can get lost in your daily activities. You can run businesses. You can have little kerfuffles with, fellow humans and everything. But once you get a little glimpse, it always brings you back to that. And that's when at the end of the day, you're going to do your little accounting sheet, and you're going to find, yeah, I fell off the wagon all sorts of times, but you know what? It always the presence, because I've acknowledged it long enough and actually experienced it, it is always going to bring me back to the right side of the column. And that's when good things start happening in your life.
Yeah, it was recently, my oldest son was going through a bit of winter composting, and I was getting him outside a couple days ago and went to go play some football, and he was not into it. It's cold, Dad, and I am sick. And I said, no, mind your P's and Q's, son. do not say that. I am healthy. I am vital. I am powerful. I am smart. I am brave. That's what you must be focusing on. And I'm always trying to reiterate that to them. And that is really manifestation, right? And that is a great practice. In the morning, I try to do that. I write, all different I am statements that are positive, that are beautiful. And I love that you're talking about taking stake of your ledger, as you're saying. That's a classic Rosicrucian practice, right? Where you do your daily review. I'm actually excited. We're going to have on the voice of Rudolf Steiner in a couple, was that next week or in a couple weeks, actually? The gentleman who has narrated all the Rudolf Steiner lectures on the Rudolf Steiner YouTube channel. We actually have him coming on AlphaCast, and we can
That's going to be a good one.
yeah, we're gonna dive into some Goethe as well, and Steiner, and that's something that Steiner talked about a lot, was the I am, and many say he was sort of a Rosicrucian, but
Yeah. And it really helps when you're practicing medicine to understand what Steiner, his concepts, and Goethe's concepts of how the human form actually evolves the way it is into, what we think of as our anatomy. And it also allows us to incorporate what the old alchemists understood as far as the three components, the salt, the sulfur, and the mercury, and how those create a third of our anatomy each. And then when you're practicing, you can but you see those primary forces, those primal forces, I'm trying to say, at work, and it gives you more opportunity to intervene in different ways. One last thing with the I am, if we want to talk about legal stuff, whenever you're supposed to sign or do a signature, whatever, all the different things we learn in equity and, in law and the things we talk about sometimes, and in the courses that we're involved with, you're doing paperwork. And the most powerful thing you can do to sign your paperwork is not to sign it with your own hand, but to have your stamp. Sovereigns, which means the royal class, always had their sign. Yeah.
I got mine now.
Yeah, beautiful. This is just an embossment. And so any document that I have to put into the public, it has my stamp. And the stamp does not allow them to have you traverse against your will into their jurisdiction. My stamp has my family, the family Lando, kind of but in the middle of it is a big I am. And it carries a frequency that is extremely powerful. So
that's awesome. I actually would love to, the thing I just showed was more for the, it's my signature for doing, certain law stuff, commerce and stuff. But I'd love to, because if you think about it, just not long ago, everybody had all the nobles and stuff had their seal. They sealed all of their
seal.
Everything with. Yeah.
Seal is a better way to do it.
Yeah. And, so that's awesome, man. I'd love to, next time I'm over there at the farm, I want to check that out. Yes, as Giselle said, it's like a sigil. And there's something to the alchemical energetics of physically signing something. You're applying so much more of your I am power to that and giving that away.
I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah.
But it's an embossment, and then I just put the ink over it. And then it's just, you can see down below family Lando in the middle, it says I am. And it's a frequency. And what we find in everything we do, and especially when you go into legal land, if you carry that frequency in with you that cannot be disputed or distorted in any way, your problems start going away. And that's what our workshop here at the farm with Marshall is all about. Is, you need to own that on the inner level, and then the paperwork is secondary.
Yeah, yes. Very cool. Yeah, and I look forward to we're talking with Marcia Ann about helping her with putting out on our platform her new course that she's working on that's going next level. And, it'd be great to have another hangout, get together, workshop on the farm with our executive co-op members in person, because once again, we're always using the online realm as a conduit towards the physical. And one thing I was thinking earlier too, when you're talking about this sort of overlays of all the, the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and the humming in the air, is like one of the great solutions to that is going back to analog. And literally, Bear, that was like the first episode we did, like in 2017, the first Alpha Cast, and it's more true than ever, which is embracing the analog, because that really is the true sciences, right? That's a qualitative expression, is the analog, because it's not defined within zeros and ones that are specifically have a limitation. Analog is, and the waveform is qualitative in its expression. It can go as far as you want or as low as you want. It's minimal. Like with literally, I'm trying to get embraced back into vinyl and get it. I've been looking for like an old school 70s style record player console type thing, to put in the house and just have all my vinyl under. I've got about 6,000 records from my vinyl DJ days, and pulling that out, the choice ones, and applying that more than falling into the Spotify Bluetooth speaker thing that everyone does, and it's such a more pleasant experience. And then I've really embraced reading books again. And it's funny, we had, I think, 4 power outages this last week due to heavy winter storms. And so I was reading Charles Dickens by candlelight at night. And there's just something it feels so good, and I'm not saying we're Luddites and we need to go back to living like this, but I think in balancing that and then figuring out how to have crystals lighting our houses. It's funny. Superman's coming out again. I don't know if we're going to go watch it, but I got my boys into watching the old school original Superman with, from the 70s, the Richard
Those are
Donner
great.
films. Yeah. And what was their technology that they were using? It was like this crystalline technology, right?
Yeah.
Where they were able to store
When the
all
bad
their
guys got trapped in the cubes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, it's interesting because they were trapped in like a 2D prison thing.
Yeah.
In the original ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
And then they were put into like another
Interesting.
realm. And that actually allowed them to survive the destruction of their planet. But why not have technology that's analog, where we have these crystals that are lighting, that we have light stored in them. That's literally how we launched this YouTube channel, was trying to go deeper into that type of science. And I think that is a huge answer, as I'm literally looking at crystals on my desktop here. And then of course, things like the tuning forks, Bear, and the radiesthesia and all of that, like diving deeper into all of that stuff this year and following is what I would love to do more with you, Bear. Figuring out how I can really start to maximize this type of technology. You did an amazing talk at Music in Sky this year where we touched a lot on that. And it's really, what's great about it is it reiterates, you were talking about how with the I am, you can really only know it personally yourself when it starts to work. Well, one element I think around that is health and wellness and like understanding the inside out game. And when we're really embracing this stuff, we can prove it to ourselves by not having those symptoms so much anymore of physical symptomology of being quote unquote sick. That's one great way to prove yourself that when you really do the work and you're embracing this stuff, you should and you will find yourself much healthier.
Yeah, great topic that I'd like to hit on with the gentleman who is the voice of Steiner.
Yeah.
Is Steiner does a great lecture on the Masonics, the Masons. And he talks about the original Masonic teachings, rebuilding the temple, which is us, not what it became to be known as more the superficial outer temple, and then of course infiltrated by folks that kept some teachings for themselves, that could be powerful if kept from the masses, but really not the real stuff. And I'd like to just have him kind of reiterate what Steiner's thing was, because of course you get out these days, and you mention Mason, and everybody starts crossing themselves, and oh, bad. And yeah, I mean, everything's been infiltrated. I mean, the frickin' NFL has been infiltrated. It's all fixed. It's farcical. It's it's happening in every part of our culture. So yeah, it's just nice to know the origins of things, because the origin of things come from our Creator, and only mankind can distort after the fact. We always talk about the bad guys and how they're these left brain predators that have lost their creativity. Well, that goes for every single one of us, because there is nothing that we have originally created. It was all original design. And then what we do with it is up to us. And some people have gone so far to purposely distort things in order to adversely affect others. So let's just grow up and start taking responsibility for ourselves. And I think that's pretty much, we've covered a lot of everything. Anything else you can think of? Well, how about this? We'll just do like maybe 5 minutes or less of what to expect from the Alfa Vedic website. We are transitioning, and you give me any thoughts to the contrary, okay? Because we talk a lot behind the scenes. We are eventually going to be going predominantly into the private. Yep. That means in order to access some of our special offerings that, some of the new things I'm making now, it requires about 7 steps that we each, depending on the product, will take weeks or even months to go through those steps. And you've been to the lab here where I've got everything lined up in different stages of development. And with new technology, I can put things out, expedite a little bit, but still never get into mass manufacturing. So we don't want to undermine the quality and those steps, because those steps have very important qualitative consequences, just like the old alchemist knew. And so in order to maintain that type of quality, we're going to have those available to our private clientele. We're also, when you become a private member, then you will have access to a lot of other things. I think there's a lot back there to keep people happy right now. I mean, think of all the content that we have, not being derogatory to any other person, but when you go into the world of private memberships, usually maybe you get some private media content, but not much else. And then they'll be promoting other people's products because they get a little affiliate kickback. We're actually growing stuff, making stuff ourselves. We aren't always just asking, on podcasts, say, hey, let's, make a donation and all that kind of thing. It's like, no, we roll up our sleeves and earn our way. And that's a model that we're going to stick to. We're going to bring it more into the private. Now, there's a couple products that we can actually mass market without ruining the quality, and also to provide the funding that we need. I want to buy a $70,000 microscope. Mike, you've got a lot of things on your end, in order to, bring our media arm up to, the next level that we all want to see it, including, original video productions and things, like some other people are doing. So we're using those, that we'll get more out in the mass market in order to fund bigger things, so that we can do what we hope will bring positive changes to a lot of people. We'll be doing some regular monthly package specials with things that we haven't released into the public yet, and make them available to the public, and then afterwards bring them into the private, So there's going to be a lot of new things in 2025 that's really fun, and that kind of keeps me interested, because I like to do creative things and make things and, materialize ideas. That's what is fun for me. And we have a great team, because Mike, you do the same thing in your arena. My son Bryden does it in his arena. Deb is the the magic thumb out in the garden. It does all the design in the farm. And, our farm is actually turning into, we're just talking about this morning how we're going to bring it up the next level this year. It's kind of turning into a stately little, farm estate. And, a long ways from its original raw beginnings. And so we're going to keep taking that next level, next level. And it's not just about producing stuff and funding, it's about aesthetics, because aesthetics are what you bring in the qualitative side of life, which really feeds our souls.
Great. Great summary, Bear. I really appreciate that. Hopefully it's inspiring others to visit our site and check out the membership. One thing I want to stress to people is that just coming from a development side and in how we engineer everything on the web is we do it decentralized. So we do everything open source. We don't use third-party systems, so we're not on Shopify. I know a lot of people, we may do a little bit, we may be using Shopify a bit for one public offering just to really make it really easy for people to buy with the Tooth Serum, but we have stuck to our guns. Everything's decentralized. We own everything. Everything is, all the code is ours. Even from how we handle the membership, how we, everything's done through our own encrypted database. Very, very important because one, it's just smart, because if they really start twisting the control systems to take out, independent thinkers, it's very easy to an attack vector will be a third-party system. And we've seen it like with quote unquote like Kajabi and these other platforms that people pay a membership for. It's like a software service solution called an SAS, software as solution. Not to nerd out too much, guys, here, but it's important because this is a lot more work to do it this way, and it's challenging at times. But if we were to just to sell out and use Kajabi or Circle or these other, for instance, social media software solution platforms, and some of them are great. They're saying that they're not going to censor, they're not going to, take people out. But if they get pressured enough, with the flip of a button, they can turn you off, and all of your data, all of your history, all of your legacy stuff, like we've seen here on LooshTube, and we're on other platforms when we stream. Like we're on Odyssey, streaming on Odyssey right now. We're streaming on Rumble. We're streaming on SayerG's Unite. In fact, Rumble is kicking ass right now. We've got a good amount of people right now watching us on Rumble. And that is centralized, but it's just diversifying. But on our website, we have taken that very seriously. So it's decentralized in that way. And then it's in the private. So when you come into the membership, you sign as a living man or woman that you are coming in and understanding contractually with us that you are going to be in honor as a man or woman, not as your fiction, to be there. And it's nice to be in the private there because one, it's safe. You feel like you're in a proper online community where you can express yourself without worrying the CIA's, watching you or whatever. And that you are actually supported in the community there. You can ask maybe sensitive health questions that you wouldn't feel comfortable asking on a YouTube chat or on Telegram. And you'll get answers there. And it's crowdsourced in the sense that a lot of the community content is just from our community. Like we're going to be doing a lot more to put forward unique, new content from us on there this year. But also it's just phenomenal what the community has come out and doing there on that platform in all different aspects. And, from, like we were saying at the start, from gardening and growing your own food to raising your children in the right way and education to trippy stuff to, down rabbit holes and all that good fun stuff. It's kind of like the old forums, right? Of the original Internet 2.0 that we've brought back. And it has that wonderful feeling to it. We've got the member map on there, so you can opt in to be on that, and then you can find people in your physical neck of the woods and contact them and meet up with them. And we have Alfa Vedic meetups and all of that stuff for users who are just taking that upon themselves to do that. So that's fantastic. And we are going to, so just a couple things that I want to work on this year is getting off Zoom. We tried it last year. We had some technical difficulties, but for our meetings, not using Zoom anymore. That is one sort of linchpin we have. And we have a great open source opportunity, software that we can use as an alternative that we just need to engineer better. And then also, we will be doing our live stream straight to the platform as well, which is pretty easy to turn on. So if we do get shut off these other ones, people can join us there right on the site. And then, as you mentioned, doing more just in the private live streams and stuff where we can go deeper into topics we can never touch upon in the public, like those executive co-op chats that we have that are really phenomenal. And then developing our media arm to where we can start, once again, going back to this idea of developing culture with our background in film and you know, with, you mentioned Bryden, that's in his wife, they're filmmakers. I'm a filmmaker. My youngest son wants to be a filmmaker. He's making his own stop action films and fun stuff. We're shooting film all the time. Well, not film, we're shooting on digital, but we're making movies all the time. So why not create the new Hollywood, right? With other friends that are doing this as well. Like, we can do it all thanks to technology and thanks to this community. So yes, lots and lots of fun stuff planned. I personally would love to make like, you know, we've talked about this, and, you know, doing, what if we were able to do phenomenal live action scripted feature films about topics that Hollywood won't touch, like a Saint Germain movie, like a movie on Walter Russell biopic. We've talked to Matt Presti about doing that, and having him come over and help work on that screenplay. You know, like, how phenomenal would it be? And then we distribute it ourselves, and like how Larkin Rose has done, he's shown that, right, with the film they did last year. So anyways, yeah, there's so much to be done. And you mentioned one other thing that's, you know, I think really important for people that might be on the later spectrum of life watching this, is like, by finding those passions, Bear, that you have, it keeps you young. It keeps you vital.
Yep.
It keeps you going. And I will always be that way. I will never, quote unquote, retire, because my vocation in life is just what I do every day. And same with you, same with Deb. And that's another thing that we're always trying to, you know, express here through Alfa Vedic.
Exactly. And it's about quality. And a long time ago, I could have just cranked out tinctures and things, you know, the same that everybody else is doing. We could make a lot more money quicker. People would say, oh, I can afford those more. But, you know, it's not what we do. We're bringing back real authentic things that aren't available. And I'm not saying that just because I'm making this stuff. It's just, I know the industry, and there's nowhere in the marketplace that is offering certain complex things. Yeah, the ingredients, the time to make everything adds up, but you're actually getting a lot more for your money when you understand the difference. So I appreciate folks that are just looking for bargains out there, but it's not always a bargain just by getting something that's inexpensive, because the results aren't going to be the same. The same thing with everything you just talked about, you know, on the media end of things. It's about doing it different and bringing back authenticity and things that are going to, you know, really give people more for their worth. So thanks everybody for being here today. Happy 2025. And one thing I will ask for, with your support, whether you're members or not, because, you know, we're starting to get better crowds in here in our chats, and, you know, we're organically growing, but understand that we're really isolated by the technologies that are highly throttling our numbers for a long time now. And like, if you just look at our YouTube channel, what we're trying to get up to 40,000 or something. I think realistically, just from what I've seen with my own eyes, we should be up to a couple hundred or more thousand members right now. And so you can really help us just by, you know, pushing the membership on the YouTube or Rumble or wherever you are. Follow us that way. Hit the like, because it helps us out a lot. I know there's a lot of great people you know, tuning in and don't think of doing that. I do the same thing sometimes. You know, I'll finish a video and I go, oh, I forgot to do the like. But please help us out that way. It really does help. And everybody else in this internet marketplace is not bashful for asking for that kind of support. So help us out.
Yes. Really, really helps. Not to, we never do the cheesy, you know, like subscribe, hit the like button, all that stuff, but it's true. It does help, and it's an easy thing to do. It's just share with one or two friends that you feel may get a lot out of this, and because that is the organic means and how we support each other, and that's really the way that we do business, right? And that's different from the competitive nature of the mainstream. It's about cooperation. It's about collaboration. It's about working together to foster a whole new way of being and doing business by supporting each other, not competing against each other. That's why we support other YouTube channels and other podcasts and on Rumble and Odyssey and all these other people. We'll go in and I repost stuff all the time. Like some of these, you know, and there's no knock on some of our friends, but we've noticed that on some of their Telegrams, they only post their stuff. And like, we're very generous in how we promote our friends and their shows and things. And because it's just how it should be, right? It's just how you should behave. And it's called being a good person. It's like, just makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Awesome, guys. Well,
Mike,
hey,
always
everybody,
good chatting with you, my friend.
2025, 2, 2, 5 equals 9. Numerology 9 is about, right, seeking that final infinite grandeur before the end of the deca, before the end of the 10, till we hit the 10. 9 is a really powerful number. We don't need to get it all into that, but this is a 9 year, so the numerology is powerful, and of course it
Beatles'
means
White Album.
yes. There's just, yeah, so get your White Album and go play it in reverse today. And
Number 9.
but yeah, I'm excited for the guests that we have coming on and all that's going to be happening with the community. Thank you guys so much. Please join us in the private alphavedic.com/join-us. We'll see you on the flip side next Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Love you. And we're wishing you all the very merriest and happiest of holidays still as we move into this new year, which is just a Gregorian construct. We understand it's just another day in the end, but it's fun to recognize this stuff. So, okay, Bear, you have a good one.
Okay.
And love you guys. See you next time. Oh, and always remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, show Mother Nature some love. And she'll show it right back to you. We have lots of fun gardening content coming to you this year. And we look forward to really growing with you guys.